This video is kindly sponsored by Ground News.
Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
Now, I know a lot of you want to stop thinking about politics, especially the election. I get it. Whoever you voted for, you're probably exhausted. The algorithms have well and truly burnt you out. Trust me, they've done the same to me. But here's the thing. In analyzing the exit polls, something has become crystal clear, and it's why I'm making this video. The Democrats didn't just lose an election here. They are so utterly that it genuinely blows my mind. We're talking about a complete reconstruction of core voter blocks. It wasn't just a loss. This is the kind of seismic shift that's going to force a complete change in how the left operates, or there won't be any left. Look, I know this channel usually focuses on religion, and some of you sigh whenever I venture into politics, but in the US, politics and religion are becoming increasingly interwoven. I mean, the voting bloc against abortion that just voted for Trump, that's overwhelmingly religion. And the way the Trump administration is quickly forming, let's just say that education is in serious trouble. I'm betting that they'll replace universities with the creationism of PragerU and call it academic freedom. But seriously, the data we're about to dive into, mind-blowing. Trump has completely and utterly transformed American politics. As you know, I don't like the guy, and I'm not a fan of the First Lady Elon either. But my God, what they've accomplished here is very impressive. Let's get to it.
Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race.
And will return to the White House.
Donald Trump, a man with 90-odd criminal charges who tried to overturn an election.
The love in the air, I've never seen anything like it.
And was impeached not once, but twice.
The only president of the United States to be impeached for a second time.
Just won the presidency again. I mean, come on. Even if you voted for Trump, you have to admit that we are living in some pretty extraordinary times.
When they took a shot at my hero,
a higher IQ than any man alive.
Enough was enough! And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother!
So smart!
And while the left is reeling, nursing its wounds and pointing fingers, what we actually need to do is understand how exactly we ended up here. Today's analysis isn't going to be comfortable. We're going to dissect 3 presidential elections, 2016, 2020, and yes, 2024, to understand how Trump didn't just win, but fundamentally reshaped American politics. The gender gap in American politics isn't just persisting, it's evolving in fascinating ways. Hillary Clinton secured a +13 advantage among women in 2016. Biden managed to push that even higher to +15 in 2020. But here's where things get worrying. Harris, in 2024, only managed a +8 advantage with women voters, despite abortion rights being front and center in the campaign. Crucially, this isn't just a minor fluctuation, it's a serious warning sign. We're talking about a 7-point drop from Biden's performance with women just 4 years ago. And remember, this happened in an election where reproductive rights were supposedly a driving force. Even more telling is that Harris couldn't match Clinton's numbers from 2016, before Dobbs was even on the radar. But there are reasons for this that we're going to get into a bit later. Meanwhile, look at what happened with men. Trump started with a +11 advantage in 2016, saw it dip to +8 in 2020, but then roared back to +13 in 2024. That's his strongest performance yet with male voters across all 3 elections. Here's what's wild. Support for abortion rights has actually increased since Dobbs. 2/3 of Americans now say abortion should be legal in all or most cases. That's up significantly from 2020. But here's the political puzzle. Even with this surge in pro-choice sentiment, Trump won. How? Because about half of the legal in most cases voters, people who generally support abortion rights, voted for him anyway. Those voters agree more with Harris on abortion policy, but they chose Trump regardless. Even more telling, look at how the anti-abortion voters broke. Trump won illegal in most cases voters by +85, and illegal in all cases by +77. These are absolutely crushing margins, but they're not that surprising. We know that this was a one-issue vote for many people. So while there are fewer anti-abortion voters overall, they're voting as a bloc for Trump with incredible consistency. So here's what should really be keeping up Democratic strategists at night. The assumption that Dobbs would automatically translate into overwhelming support for women voters just got shattered. Either the message missed the mark, or, and this is crucial, other issues superseded abortion rights in voters' minds. Speaking of Democrats losing touch with voters, this story on Ground News perfectly illustrates why having comprehensive news coverage is so critical. When I was researching this election analysis, I came across a fascinating story. A Democrat strategist admitted on CNN that her party has lost common sense and the ability to speak to normal people. Interestingly, left-wing media isn't covering it, making it a total blind spot for those readers. This is a feature on Ground News, which shows you all the articles that you might not have seen that are being disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. What caught my attention wasn't just the story itself, it's how differently it's being covered. Ground News showed me that 69%, well hey, of the coverage came from right-leaning sources. Sorry, always going to be a kid. While left-leaning outlets largely ignored it. Even more telling, over 60% of the sources on this story have mixed factuality, suggesting a lot of partisan spin was being added to her actual comments. Look at these headlines about the same CNN appearance. While some outlets straightforwardly reported Democratic strategist calls for party to return to common sense politics, others went with brutal CNN host, absolutely silent as Democratic strategist delivered some hard truths. Same interview, completely different framing. This is exactly why I've made Ground News my go-to source for understanding developing stories from all angles. I'm telling you, one of the biggest reasons the Dems lost is because they haven't exited their echo chambers. That's where blind spots help. This isn't just about political coverage. Ground News helps you spot these blind spots across all major stories. I genuinely believe in what they're doing, which is why I'm excited to share that Ground News is offering my viewers, you, 50% off their Ultimate Access Vantage plan. It's their best deal of the year. Just go to ground.news/rationality or scan the QR code on screen. This offer is only available for a limited time. And here's the thing, Ground News is subscriber funded, which means when you sign up, you're not just getting comprehensive news coverage, you're also supporting independent content like this channel. Alright, let's get back to the analysis. Thanks. The education divide in American politics isn't just growing, it's becoming a canyon. And it's not following the simple pattern that many predicted. Let's break down this piece by piece because it tells us something profound about how American politics is evolving. First, let's look at white voters without college degrees, what many call the
working class whites.
Trump's lead here has stayed remarkably stable, plus 37 in 2016, plus 35 in 2020, and plus 34 in 2024. Break this down by gender, and you see white men without degrees giving Trump massive margins, plus 48 in 2016, slightly down to plus 40 in 2024. White women without degrees? Rock solid for Trump, plus 27 in 2016, and plus 28 in 2024. But here's where things get pretty fascinating. White college graduates. In 2016, Trump had a slim +3 lead with this group. By 2024, Harris won them by +7. That's a 10-point swing. And white women with college degrees? They moved even more dramatically, from Clinton's +7 in 2016 to Harris's +16 in 2024. But here's the polish that terrified Democratic strategists. Voters of color across all education levels are slipping away. College-educated voters of color went from +50 Democratic with Clinton to +33 with Harris. Non-college voters of color? Even worse, from +56 with Clinton to +30 with Harris. That is a collapse of 26 points in 8 years. These numbers are not just showing Democratic shifts, they're revealing a complete inversion of traditional American political coalitions. And honestly, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. I mean, the Democratic Party, born as the party of the working class, is now increasingly becoming the party of college-educated whites. Harris did better with white college graduates than did Biden or Clinton, but hemorrhaged support among working-class voters of all races. The party of the people is rapidly becoming the party of the professional class. Meanwhile, Trump's Republican Party is building something unprecedented. a multi-racial coalition of working-class voters. That stable plus 34 lead among whites without degrees isn't just some angry white voter phenomena anymore. It's the foundation of a broader working-class movement that's increasingly attracting voters of color. And here's what's fascinating. Education isn't just correlating with voter patterns, it's becoming a dominant front line in American politics, trumping even race in many cases. When non-college voters of color swing from plus 56 Democratic to plus 30 in 8 years, we're watching class politics transform in real time. The Democratic gains among college-educated whites aren't nearly enough to offset the losses among working-class voters of all races. You can win all of the suburban college graduates you want, but when you're bleeding support among both working-class whites and working-class voters of color, you have a serious problem. We're witnessing the birth of a new political realignment. College-educated professionals of all races clustering in the Democratic Party, while working-class voters of all races increasingly move Republican. Well, if you wanted to see a political stereotype get absolutely shattered, here it is. The Democratic advantage among young voters just took a nosedive. From Clinton's plus 19 with 18 to 29-year-olds in 2016, to Biden's impressive plus 24 in 2020, to Harris's squeaking by with just plus 11 in 2024. That is a 13-point collapse in 4 years. And it gets worse when you look at the 30 to 44 age group. Clinton had them by plus 10, Biden by plus 6, and Harris just by plus 1. That is not a margin of victory. That is a rounding error. We're watching an entire generation of voters slip through Democratic fingers in real time. Remember all those think pieces about how Gen Z and millennials would usher in a permanent Democratic majority? Yeah, think about that. It turns out that young voters aren't some monolithic progressive bloc. They're actually behaving like, well, voters.
Well, duh.
They're responding to economic conditions, questioning establishment narratives, and increasingly willing to give a radical a chance. Now, here's an irony that is genuinely painful. While Democrats were losing their grip on young voters, they actually gained ground with seniors. Trump's lead among those aged 65 and over shrank from plus 7 in 2016 to a dead heat in 2024. The Party of Youth and Change made more progress with old people than young people. That is saying something. Again, this isn't just a democratic shift, it's a fundamental challenge to Democratic Party orthodoxy. The assumption that time was on the Democrats' side, that they just needed to wait for younger voters to replace older conservatives, that strategy just got crushed into a wall of reality. Trump isn't just maintaining his coalition, he's expanding it by bringing in voters who weren't even old enough to vote against him in 2016. Let's start with Latino men, because that is where an earthquake just happened. In 2016, Clinton had a plus 31 advantage. That is a massive advantage. By 2020, Biden's lead had shrunk to plus 23. But in 2024, Trump didn't just close the gap, he won Latino men by plus 12. That's a 43-point swing in just 8 years. Wow. That is absurd. Think about it for a second. We're talking about a voting bloc that Democrats considered part of their base, completely flipping to Trump.
Why did you choose Trump this time?
For me, security, immigration, this situation with immigration is out of control.
And this isn't just about immigration policy. This is about something much deeper in how Latino men see themselves and their place in American politics. Latino women tell a similar, if less dramatic, story. Clinton had them by plus 44, Biden by plus 39, and Harris managed just plus 22. Don't get me wrong, this is still a Democratic advantage, but it's been cut in half since 2016. The demographics our destiny crowd might want to update their PowerPoints. Now, black voters show a different pattern. Yes, there's been some erosion. Black men went from plus 69 for Clinton to plus 56 for Harris, and black women from plus 90 to plus 84. But these still remain overwhelmingly Democratic constituencies. The real story here isn't about black voters leaving the Democrats. It's about them showing less enthusiasm. So I guess the punchline is this. While Democrats were busy predicting that changing demographics would guarantee their future victories, Trump was actually reshaping those very demographic coalitions. The assumption that ethnic minorities would automatically vote Democrat, that myth just got well and truly buried in a landslide of data. Let's dig into what the numbers really tell us about the future, because they're screaming something that Democrats seem determined not to hear. The Latino shift isn't just a temporary blimp, it's a fundamental reconstructing of American political coalitions. When Latino men swing 43 points in 8 years, that's not a fluke. That is a complete reconceptualization of political identity. These voters aren't just leaving the Democratic Party, they're actively embracing Trump's version of the Republican Party. And we need to know that this shift happened despite, or maybe because of, 4 years of Democratic messaging about Trump being anti-immigration and racist. The entire Democratic strategy was built on the assumption that minorities would naturally recoil from Trump's rhetoric. Instead, we're seeing the exact opposite. The black voter numbers equally tell an important story, just in a different way. Those declining margins from 69 to 56 for black men and 90 to 84 for black women might look small compared to the Latino swing, but in close elections, Democrats don't just need black voters to choose them over Republicans, they need them to turn out in overwhelming numbers. That drop in enthusiasm is political poison in places like Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, all 3 key states that allowed Trump to so devastatingly win. White voters? Oh boy, that's where things get very interesting. Trump's lead with white men actually dropped from plus 31 in 2016 to plus 23 in 2024. That's a huge drop. White women have stayed relatively stable, however, shifting just slightly from plus 9 for Trump in 2016 to plus 8 in 2024. Trump's declining margin with white men from plus 31 to plus 23 would normally be terrible news for Republicans. But he more than made up for them by expanding his coalition among minority voters. In other words, Trump didn't just hold together the traditional Republican coalition, he built a new one. This is the reality that Democratic strategists need to face. Their entire political model is breaking down. The assumption that demographics would eventually doom the Republican Party isn't just wrong, it's exactly backwards. Trump is building a multiracial, working-class coalition, while Democrats increasingly represent an alliance of white, college-educated voters and declining numbers of minority voters. Now, if you want to see the story of this election in 3 simple lines, here it is. Rural America didn't just stick with Trump, it doubled down. The temporary dip to plus 15 in 2020, well, Trump's back to a commanding plus 30 lead in rural areas, actually better than his 2016 numbers. What's really captivating is that the suburbs, which were supposed to be Trump's kryptonite, stayed exactly where they've been since 2016, basically split in the middle. The suburban revolt against Trump that was so predicted never happened. The suburbs remained stubbornly balanced, with Trump holding a razor-thin +4 margin, almost identical to 2016. Urban areas tell an equally important story, but not one that the Democrats might hope. Yes, they remain solidly blue, but look at the trajectory. Clinton +26, Biden +22, Harris +21. They're still winning in cities comfortably, but they're winning them less comfortably with each passing election. This map again demolishes one of the Democrat Party's core assumptions, that urbanization and suburbanization would gradually doom the Republican Party. Instead, we're seeing the exact opposite. When you're losing rural areas by 30 points, barely holding even the suburbs, and watching your urban margins slowly decline, you're not just losing an election, you're losing the electoral map. The Democratic Geographic Coalition is slowly coming apart at the seams, while Trump is getting stronger where it matters most. A +4 Trump margin in the suburbs means that the suburban strategy, the idea that educated suburbanites would be repulsed by Trump and permanently shift Democratic, has failed. These voters might dislike Trump's style, but they're voting for him anyway. And the urban numbers? That slow erosion from +26 to +21 might not seem huge, but in a close election, it is devastating. Democrats don't need to win cities, they need to win them by a massive margin to offset rural losses. Every point they lose in urban areas requires them to make up ground somewhere else, and this map shows there's nowhere else to make it up. Here's the real nightmare for Democrats. Winning California by an extra million votes doesn't help if you're losing Wisconsin by 20,000. The Electoral College and Senate map reward distributed political power, and right now, only one party has it. This isn't just about 2024, it's about the future of Democratic electoral viability. Unless they can figure out how to compete in rural areas again, and dramatically improve their suburban performance, they're facing a structural disadvantage that no amount of urban turnout can overcome. So, the story of 2024 isn't just about Trump winning, it's about the complete transformation of American political coalitions. Let's break down what we've learned, because it's going to reshape politics for years to come, whether you like it or not. First, the Democratic coalition is crumbling in exactly the places they can't afford to lose. Latino men swung 43 points towards Trump in 8 years. Young voters, once reliably Democrat, abandoned the party in droves. Rural America isn't just leaning right, it's running right at full speed. Second, it's the economy. Stupid. And Democrats forgot this fundamental rule. When half of voters say they're far worse off than 4 years ago, and they break for your opponent by 64 points, no amount of messaging about democracy or social issues will save you. Third, the education realignment is complete. Democrats have become the party of college-educated professionals, while Republicans are building a multiracial coalition of working-class voters. This is a fundamental restructuring of political identity. Even on abortion, where Democrats are winning the policy argument decisively, voters who agree with them still voted for Trump if they thought that he could handle the economy better. And perhaps most telling, first-time voters, traditionally a Democratic stronghold, broke for Trump in double digits. When you're losing the future by those margins, you need to completely rethink your approach from the ground up. So the death of the deep state may be the best thing that could happen to Democrats. They need to come into this with a completely different approach. Anyhow, if you found this analysis useful in understanding how American politics is transforming, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep bringing you deep dives into the data that matters, cutting through the noise to get what's really driving the politics. We have to approach this differently, and this channel is dedicated to achieving just that. Lastly, check out Ground News. Please do. They're a great sponsor for the channel. Absolutely adore them. Love their product. Use it every day. Check it out. If you sign up with my link, it does help us out personally. Thanks.